Geneva, talks under pressure, doubt everywhere. European spies are skeptical. Peace this year? Unlikely. Trump pushes Kyiv to negotiate fast. Ukraine is under US political pressure before the midterms. Moscow is not rushing. Ultimatums over Donetsk. Civilian strikes continue. Missiles and drones stockpiled. Ceasefire offers ignored. Ukraine wants result. Political compromises still pending. Next round, February. Donbas and security guarantees remain unresolved. The US sees progress, but is it enough? Can Geneva hold the balance of power? Europe is talking nuclear. Estonia ready for NATO weapons. France and the UK are the only continental powers. Poland and the others explore their own options. Meanwhile, Russia bypasses $22 billion in sanctions. Tech, drone parts, semiconductors, electronics following in from Japan, Taiwan, South Korea and Europe. Who is buying time? Is Kremlin ready to compromise? Can we trust any progress while cities are still under fire? Everything you need to know right now. European intelligence agencies doubt that Russia's war against Ukraine will end this year. Leaders of intelligence services from 5 European countries are pessimistic about the chances of reaching a ceasefire agreement, despite claims by Donald Trump that US brokered talks have brought the prospect of a peace deal. This information was provided to Reuters by the intelligence chiefs on condition of anonymity. Top intelligence officials say Russia is not interested in ending the war quickly. 4 of them noted that Moscow is using US brokered talks to push for sanctions relief and business deals. The latest round of negotiations in Geneva this week is described by them as theater. These assessments highlight a stark difference in approach between European capitals and the White House, which, according to Ukraine, is aiming to secure a peace deal by June, ahead of the US midterm elections. Donald Trump claims that, in his view, Vladimir Putin wants to reach an agreement. A key problem, according to one intelligence chief, is that Russia neither wants nor needs a quick peace, and its economy is not on a brink of collapse. While the intelligence leaders did not specify how they obtained the information, the agencies rely on human sources, intercepted communications, and other means. All stressed that Russia remains a top priority for intelligence gathering. One of officials said Russia might be satisfied territorially if it receives the rest of Donetsk region, but that would not allow it to achieve its main goal – overthrowing Ukraine's pro-Western government. Another warned that Ukraine giving up Donetsk would not quickly lead to a peace deal. At the same time, top intelligence officials stressed concern about the very limited negotiation skills on Russia in Western Europe, including the European side, which, according to Zelensky, should play a more active role in talks. Meanwhile, the Russians are once again talking about addressing the root of causes of the conflict, but they have not commented on the Zelensky-Putin meeting. Meanwhile, Moscow has weighed in on the results of the 2-day Geneva talks, still referencing last year's Alaska discussion between Putin and Trump. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the sides reportedly continued discussing a concept that addresses the root causes of the conflict in Ukraine. Essentially, Russia is trying to present itself as a peacemaker despite being the aggressor.
We are currently in Geneva with the Americans continuing discussions on the Alaska Understanding, which was based on recognizing the root causes of the conflict and the need to address them. No NATO membership and no attempts to refute the decision of the people in Donbas who, under conditions of complete discrimination, when the Kyiv regime has legally sought to eradicate all things Russian and canonical orthodoxy, express their wish to return to the Russian Federation. This was acknowledged, and I hope it continues to be acknowledged, based on the understandings reached in Alaska.
Sergei Lavrov also said that Russia and the US have agreed to step up a separate economic working group. According to the Russian official, it will operate in parallel with the ongoing talks on military and political issues. Lavrov added that Russia values President Donald Trump's position on resolving the situation and is closely watching what he described as European attempts to influence Washington. The Russian minister again accused Europe, as well as Ukraine, of delaying peace and claimed that the current security guarantees being offered to Kyiv are aimed against Moscow.
What Europe is currently considering and promoting as the priority for resolving the Ukrainian conflict are security guarantees only for Ukraine, explicitly framed against Russia. In other words, Europe intends to guarantee security as long as the Kyiv regime remains an enemy of the Russian Federation and continues the war with us. A war that the European Union apparently wants. In Munich, slogans were voiced in various formulations, but their essence was the same. Russia is the enemy, and Ukraine must finish off Russia. Finnish President Stubb, from what was once a neutral country, now one of the most prominent neo-Nazi-aligned leaders, stated that Ukraine is doing everything correctly. Keep going. Finish off Russia. This was declared by the President of Finland. How can one speak of such a politician? What Zelensky displayed in Munich probably does not even require commentary. Anyone who listens to or reads what he said will realize that this person does not want any peace. He publicly stated it.
After repeated accusation against Ukraine and Europe, the Kremlin has also responded to the Geneva talks. For now, Moscow is holding back from commenting on President Zelensky's initiative to meet with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. At the same time, officials noted that it's still too early to talk about the results of the negotiations. Russian media report, citing Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov, that any information on the outcomes will be released by Russia's chief negotiator Vladimir Medinsky. When asked about interim results of the third round of talks in Switzerland, Peskov said that direct reports are being sent to Putin, but it's still too early to make any assessments. In his evening video address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he had detailed discussions several times with members of the negotiating team in Geneva and expects that next meeting to take place in February. He also emphasized the humanitarian track, including separate prisoner exchanges and the release of civilians.
Ukraine is interested in achieving results. As of today, we cannot say that the outcome is sufficient. The military discussed some of the issues, seriously and substantively, sensitive political matters, questions about possible compromises, and the necessary meeting of leaders have not yet been sufficiently addressed. We are counting on the next meeting, and it would be appropriate to hold it still in February. It is important that Europeans were present. France, the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy and Switzerland as the host. It is Ukraine that has consistently promoted the position that Europe should be involved in the process. I want to thank the United States of America for hearing this position.
Meanwhile, the White House sees progress in the talks. During the third round of trilateral negotiations between Ukraine, Russia and US, the delegations were able to make headway and achieve tangible results, White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt said. According to her, the parties agreed to report the meeting outcomes to their leaders, continue working on a peace agreement, and schedule the next round of negotiations.
Just yesterday, there was another round of trilateral talks between the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. There was meaningful progress made in both parties. Both sides agreed to update their respective leaders and to continue to work towards a peace deal together. So there will be another round of talks in the future. But I think the president views this entire situation as very unfair, not just for Russians and Ukrainians who have lost their lives, but also for the American people and the American taxpayer who were footing the bill for this war effort before President Trump put a stop to it.
Russian officials are signaling that Moscow will not be satisfied with territorial concessions alone and have reaffirmed their commitment to Russia's original war goals. which include undermining NATO, according to the Institute for the Study of War. Analysts have highlighted a statement from the Russian embassy in Belgium on February 17th, indicating that Moscow plans to demand NATO legally put a ban on alliance expansion based on a draft treaty Russia prepared in December 2021. According to the Institute, the embassy essentially echoed the ultimatums Russia issued to the US and NATO before launching its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The main was to limit NATO's presence on the eastern flank and curb cooperation with countries that joined the alliance after 1997, including Ukraine. Analysts stress that Kremlin officials continue to pursue their regional war goals and show no willingness to compromise to achieve peace in Ukraine. The US is reportedly pressuring NATO allies to ensure that Ukraine and Indo-Pacific partners do not take formal part in the alliance's annual summit, set to take place in Ankara this July. This information comes from Politico, citing its own sources. According to reporters, these moves reflect the White House's desire to limit NATO's role to a strictly Euro-Atlantic defense pact and scale back decades of involvement in crisis management, global partnerships, and value-based initiatives. Diplomats say the US is pressuring allies not to invite Ukraine and 4 Indo-Pacific NATO partners, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea, to official sessions during the July summit in Ankara. At the same time, these countries may still participate in related side events. Part of the reasoning is to reduce the number of meetings during the summit and cut costs amid resource constraints. This year, NATO has also decided not to hold its public forum, which normally gathers state leaders, defense experts, and government officials for panel discussions. Instead, the NATO Defense Industry Forum will take place on the sidelines of the summit. Diplomats suggest the decision may also reflect US pressure and broader Washington campaign to cut funding for international organizations. Officials emphasize that it is crucial for NATO to keep the public informed about its actions and plans, especially as the alliance seeks to justify increased defense spending. Discussions are intensifying in Europe about establishing a European nuclear capability. Estonia has already indicated it is prepared to host NATO's allies' nuclear weapons on its territory. Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna confirmed this, according to a broadcaster ERR.
We are not opposed to the deployment of nuclear weapons on our territory. We do not have a doctrine that would rule this out if NATO deems it necessary to place, for example, nuclear weapons on our territory in accordance with our defense plans.
In September 2025, Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur have also announced that the country is prepared to host British fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear warheads. It's worth noting that Estonia shares a land border with Russia of approximately 334 kilometers. According to Bloomberg, the EU is actively discussing the development of its own nuclear defense system, as the US, whose weapons are stationed on the continent, is increasingly seen as an unreliable military partner. Currently, only the UK and France possess nuclear weapons in Europe. In addition, Polish President Karol Nawrocki has indicated plans to begin developing the country's own system. Meanwhile, Belgian Defense Minister Theo Franken criticized European leaders for focusing too much on nuclear weapons. He expressed his position on X in response to a podcast by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz.
SCAF is over, said the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in this podcast. There will be no French-German sixth-generation fighter jet. Belgium was an observer in the program. We will reassess our position. Regarding nuclear deterrence, I really don't understand why European leaders are so loose-lipped. Not wise. Please, keep your mouth shut.
In an interview, the German Chancellor ruled out developing Germany's own nuclear weapons, but noted that German fighter jets could potentially carry French and British nuclear warheads. Germany and Belgium participate in the US nuclear sharing program, with their air forces capable of carrying American nuclear bombs. In 2024, Russia obtained nearly $22 billion worth of sanctions goods through intermediaries, according to an investigation by The Insider. In 2024, over 300 Russian intermediary companies import nearly $22 billion worth of sanctions goods into Russia. Around $1 billion of that went to supply Russian defense industry enterprises, according to an investigation by the journalists. The important equipment includes components for drones, microchips and sensors for military vehicles, electronic parts and batteries from Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Germany, Switzerland and other countries. Importer companies supplying Russia's defense industry in 2024 can be divided into 4 groups. The first group includes older state-owned military factories that purchase sanctions goods directly without intermediaries. Examples include the United Engine Corporation, the Ural Optical Mechanical Plant and the Kazan Helicopter Plant. They typically engage in foreign trade only in exceptional cases. The second group consists of industrial giants producing heavy products such as steel, iron, aluminium and petroleum. Russia's defense industry cannot function without them, while they can operate independently of the military sector. Most of these companies are not subject to sanctions despite their regular supplies to Russia's defense complex. The third group includes subcontractor companies that supply Russia with components made using Western technology. The Insider identifies these as the most interesting private importers for the defense sector. If sanctioned, they would need to rely on intermediaries for trade with the West, significantly complicating their operations. The fourth and the largest group consists of reseller companies. Those of greatest interest for sanctions are the ones who import turnover roughly match their transactions with the defense industry. Medium and small resellers are currently not affected by Western sanctions, according to the journalists. After Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the US and other Western countries imposed a series of sanctions aimed at limiting Moscow's ability to wage war and cutting off access to Western technology. Nevertheless, Russia continues to find ways to circumvent these restrictions and obtain foreign components. That's all for today. Thank you for watching and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your comments below.